This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Ever wonder what home cooking looks like for a fine dining chef? Well, even seasoned professionals love to dig into simple comfort foods at the end of a long day. Today, I'm talking with Ham El-Waylly. He's a chef, recipe developer, and video creator based in New York City. You may know him from the New York Times Cooking Channel, where he shared tips and tricks alongside his wife, Sola. And his new cookbook, Hello Home Cooking, is available now. Ham, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So I just want to kick off by sort of introducing people your new cookbook. So for people who are just hearing about Hello Home Cooking, what kind of cookbook is this and what are you inviting them into?
So there's always this apprehension from home cooks whenever they get a cookbook that's developed by a professional chef. So like I have a restaurant, I've been cooking professionally for a very long time, but I also have a family. I have a toddler. So I also cook for them at home, and I do not cook at home the same way that I cook in my restaurants. So I wanted to put a cookbook together that highlighted all the things that I like to cook at home that bring me a lot of comfort, kind of different spins on comfort food that I grew up eating. So I wanted to put a cookbook together of just these global comfort flavors, just in a way that people can actually make and shop and pull off at home. So I that was my main focus is like, can people actually do this? I wanted it to be a book that people cooked out of and not just flip through.
Well, and I think it's the culture of cooking and being in the kitchen has changed so much. At least I think when I was growing up, it's a very different image, and the internet didn't really exist then. And now I think there's so many jokes and memes out there that sort of make fun of like, oh, if I had a dodo bird, I can make this. Like these like incredibly crazy ingredients that no normal people would have in their kitchen. But when they see like a recipe, they tend to have these very unique ingredients that you have to go to a very special, like a specialty store to get those ingredients in order to make these recipes. But it feels like, especially the last couple of years, there seems to be a shift, and it sounds like your philosophy is a part of that. So when you're thinking about your cookbook, it sounds like accessibility is something that you are thinking about.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's when you're cooking at home for a family, like there's definitely a sense of urgency that pushes a lot of your decision making and a lot of the way that you do things. Because it's one thing when like Sol and I used to leisurely make dinner together. It would take a few hours. We'd go to the market. We'd pick up like it kind of looked like it was kind of what you picture chefs chefs cooking like in movies and stuff, and like some kind of romantic comedy where we'd like pick up this bunch of radishes, give it a whiff. Do you think we're getting enough spice out of this? And kind of put it down. But now it's oh no, we have to pick her up from school in 45 minutes. Let's swing by the store on the way. What we have to organize the aisle so we're saving as much time as possible. We break up. She hits the produce aisle. I hit the freezer aisle, and then we meet at the grains. And then you're just in and out. Pick her up, and then dinner needs to be home, or dinner needs to be on the table in 45 minutes. So there's this time crunch. It's like you're constantly doing a quick fire challenge from Top Chef.
Well, I
And
was
then
going to
that
say it sounds like you have a strategy each time.
Oh, we do. We're very, very strategic. It's also fun. It's part of the fun. Like we really like thinking about food in all of these different facets. And like this is just introduced a new fun way to think about food and think about how we can get dinner on the table.
Well, I imagine that is so relatable for most people, especially having to sort of come up with a plan to go to the store and then put food on a table. And oftentimes, I mean, the world has shifted so much, as we mentioned earlier, but we're so busy. Everyone has a different schedule. Every night is different. So it sounds like, based on what you just shared, your dishes perhaps have minimal ingredients, trying to make it easier for even beginner cooks. Was that something that you were thinking about when you were putting together your cookbook?
Absolutely. I wanted something, accessibility was at the forefront, but also I wanted something exciting and new, and I wanted people to possibly learn about new flavors or new techniques, because I do think there's this there are like these multiple categories of home cooking. You have the very, very simple. And there's a place for all of them. I'm not saying one is better than the other. But you have the ones where you kind of have a bunch of purchased things and you put them together and then you cook it and then you're done. And then you have kind of like at the other end of the spectrum, the more the more intensive ones, like things where you're making meatballs and from scratch, and then that's more of a project thing that you may break up over a couple of days, and then you make a lot so you can keep some in your freezer so you don't have to go through that whole process again. And I wanted to include a little bit of all of that because I think every situation's different, every family's different, and kind of everyone wants different things. So like I didn't want to be put into this box of like you'll only find this one type of recipe just because everyone cooks very differently. So I was really inspired by old Betty Crocker cookbooks. I'm a big collector of vintage cookbooks. Betty Crocker's have some of my favorite ones just because in a little cookbook, they can pack breakfast, snacks, dinner, lunch, holiday meals, desserts, and like little charts with specific ingredients, like how you can use asparagus 5 different ways. And they packed all of that information into a little cookbook. And that was my biggest inspiration. So I drew from that a lot. And you can find snacks, dessert, lunch, breakfast, holiday meals, quick things you can get on the table in 20 minutes. And there's even a produce chart that tells you here are some fun ways you can use these different ingredients.
Well, I love that because when you see the cover of your book, that is exactly the vibe that I think it evokes, that sort of old school vintage Betty Crocker um, cookbook style. Do you remember when that really attracted you, and how did you sort of make that your own? Because I think Betty Crocker is such a great example because it's such a specific era, specific time. And in your cookbook, you had mentioned that you have half the world's cuisine baked into your DNA. So, sort of a multifaceted question here where how did you bake that DNA into this cookbook where the vibe is very specific during the Betty Crocker era?
So I everyone tells you when you write a book or do a project that like make it something that only you can do. So I had that in my mind because there's not a lot of people who grew up in Doha, have Egyptian Bolivian parents and grew up in a Brazilian community and then moved to New York when he was when he was 19 years old. Like that's a very specific path, and with that comes a lot of different cuisines, a lot of different home cooking, a lot of different angles of how to approach ingredients. And that's something that just naturally came as I started cooking. So the my mom had a handful of cookbooks. She was a great cook. She loved cooking. Both she cooked because she had to get food on the table, but she also cooked because she liked it and she also used it as a way to connect with her community. So she had a handful of books. She had an Italian cookbook that I still have that same copy with me. She had the Julia Child cookbook, and then she had a Betty Crocker cookbook. So those are her main cookbooks. But she also had multiple. She had a Madonna notebook, and I talk about this in my book. Um, and it was a notebook that she would write recipes in that she would ask other people. So her icebreaker whenever she met a new person was, "What's your favorite thing to cook at home?" She'd ask for the recipe and then she'd make it at home. And that would be how she kind of learned about the person, connected with the person, and then that would blossom often into a friendship. So that was very much her way to connect with her community. And seeing that growing up, like you really start to notice how powerful food was and it also was what my dad did for a living. So my life really centered around a lot of food, both socially and, in the business world, just because it's what my dad did. And so fast forward to now when I was trying to work on this cookbook, I really wanted to lean on how growing up and seeing all these different kinds of food being made in my home, how they made me feel, how they made other people feel, and I wanted to filter those dishes through like this lens of technique and cuisine that I've developed over over the years, both when I was a kid with the home cooking I grew up with, and both professionally with like the techniques and other things that I learned along the way. So it's kind of this mashup of very traditional classic home cooking and this um, professional kind of new modern way of cooking at home.
And with such a rich background and a rich culture, I can only imagine what the kitchen smelled like when you were growing up. What were some of the flavors or dishes that remind you of home? And did you have a hard time finding those flavors when you moved to the US when you were 19?
So it's my relationship with home cooking was quite complicated when I first moved. So like when I first moved to the United States, it was I was 19, I was alone, I moved here by myself. My my parents didn't know this at the time, but I had every intention of going to culinary school and getting into the culinary world. But like many immigrant parents are like, we did not send you to America to be a cook. So I studied business administration for a while to appease them, and then switched over into culinary once they felt like I had enough of a degree that I could get a real job when this ultimately failed. Um, and that first year, my mom came to visit me, and she was clearly under a lot of duress. Like she was breathing heavily. She was not clearly not well. So she came with my sister, my younger sister, and so we took her to the hospital. And then shortly after, she was admitted, and then just um, a little under 2 weeks later, she passed away quite suddenly. So that was a very big shock to me. So for the longest time, I kind of locked away that home cooking part of me just because it wasn't something I was ready to unlock because I was still in the grieving process. I didn't know how to process it, so I kind of just instead of attacking it head on, I kind of hid it away and focused fully on my professional culinary career. So like I didn't for the longest time that whole part of me was lost, and that I kind of cooked that way until the pandemic when um, it was like a weird time. You didn't know what was there was so much uncertainty in the world. You didn't know what was happening, and I was in desperate need of comfort. And then that is when I went back to my mom's Madonna notebook, opened it up, and started cooking out of it. And then that is what brought me back into that world. And then I slowly unlocked all these memories and flavors. And then as I cooked through that notebook, that's when my current self really came to be, and I fully learned to combine all these things that I knew about food in the past and all the things that I know currently into the cook I am today. And it really feels like I always describe it as like I didn't realize this, but it felt like I was cooking with one hand tied behind my back for the longest time. And then once I unlocked that part of me, it like felt like I was okay, I'm actually like cooking with two hands. So it made me both a better cook at home and a better cook at the restaurant, just being really connected with that part of me as well.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that because I feel like as you are talking, I'm thinking a lot of people when they're going through grief, and it could be a short period of time, it could be a long period of time, or it could be the rest of your life, really, where they go to comfort foods or,
Yes.
comfort, whatever the food is that brings them comfort. But you went to a recipe book. Naturally, the recipes will provide you the food at some point, but you have to actually go through it and make the meals. What was the first meal that you made and you realized that this was what you needed without realizing that's what you needed?
First thing I made were the cheese empanadas out of her book. So cheese empanadas always meant a lot to me and to my mom and to my sister just because when we were growing up and we came home from school and we saw a basket of like still steaming cheese empanadas on the kitchen table, that meant that my mom was really homesick. That's what that meant. Like she'd always make it when she was really homesick. Because I mean, going to Bolivia from Doha is quite expensive, so we couldn't really afford to go every year, so we'd go every other year, which meant that she got to see her family every other year, which is a very long time because they're very close. I'm very close with them as well, so it was hard for a long time. So a way to stay connected to them and for us to stay connected to them was through food. And it's a lot of the things that she grew up eating was difficult to recreate um, properly just because there are a lot of ingredients that you don't have access to. But cheese empanadas, we had access to cheese, flour, fat, and frying oil, which is like a lot of the basics that you need to make it. So I knew that I wanted to have that feeling again. I wanted to feel that like the crunchy shell. I wanted to feel the stretchy cheese that's melted just enough where the whey starts to break out of it and it's like really moist on the inside. And I wanted to feel that sensation again. And it it's crazy how when you have something or make something that you haven't had in a long time, like because I haven't had that since I was a child. So it had been I would say maybe like 18 years since I've had that specific version. I've had plenty of other cheese empanadas, but not hers. Um, it it's crazy like the that ratatouille moment with the critic where you see the zoom in and then it's like your childhood plays in your head again. Like that is a surprisingly accurate representation of what that felt like. Of like when you bite into it and you're like, wow, it's like I'm in my childhood kitchen again. I'm holding this steaming empanada, like sharing one with my sister or my mom, and then she would always just pause and eat like half an empanada in silence, and you could almost see her going through that same moment as again. So I'm hoping that with time, my daughter will have that same connection to the cheese empanadas and like hopefully make them in 20 years when she's older and kind of relive those memories of her childhood.
Well, and as you start to play that role in her life, like your mother had played in your life, I wonder about that mix of nostalgia and now you're creating new memories. Is that something that you think about when you're making foods that you are familiar with? And also, I'm assuming you're thinking about making perhaps innovative food items for yourself, your family, and or for your fans. What goes through your mind when you're thinking about the nostalgia of your food and also creating new memories and experiences with your daughter?
It's all about just how nostalgia for me is like how it makes you feel. Like there's a certain warm and fuzzy feeling inside that certain nostalgic food gives you. And a big point in this book that I try and make is like comfort is kind of universal. So you may be eating something that you've never had before from a different culture, but there are certain elements that I think can bring you comfort, even if it isn't something you've had before. Like a perfect example is the cheese empanada or like something with melty, gooey cheese. That is comforting. Well, granted, provided you can eat cheese. If you can eat cheese, melted cheese will bring you a lot of comfort, whether it's from a grilled cheese or a quesadilla or a cheese empanada, whatever the case may be. Like there's certain things that will always warm the soul. Um, Pasta. Like I am not Italian. Most people have no connection to Italy, but somehow Italian food is comforting to everyone. Like you can put a wedge of lasagna in front of a lot of people. They might not know what it is, but you bite into it. Something about that warm, gooey, cheesy texture that just it warms your soul. And so I think that there's a big point that I try and make in the book is that yes, some of these flavors you may not be familiar with, but there's a lot of core comfort in there that you are familiar with that will bring you those same feelings, that will bring you that same comfort. And honestly, right now, our daughter's going to be 3 in August, so we are just trying to get her to eat enough protein, fiber, and vegetables, and we're not really thinking about, I wonder if you're going to find this comforting in 20 years yet. We're not at that we're not at that stage yet. We're at the stage of like, oh, I guess you don't like broccoli anymore. So how can we sneak this into like it's so weird. So she used to love broccoli. She used to love green things. She started going to school, comes back, hates green things. What's up with that? What's going on?
That's a great question.
One day she decided she didn't like cheese anymore. I'm like, come on. And
Oh
then the
no.
next day, she's just having handfuls of it, just handful of cold shredded cheese directly out of the bag. Yeah, it's a fun ride.
Well, I also think my favorite things about little kids having their meals, it's always you put something in front of them and they're like, "Oh, I don't like this." And then they take a bite and they're like, "This is the best thing
Yeah,
ever."
yeah, easily convinced,
Exactly.
easily.
Exactly. Maybe that's a whole genre of recipes that you have to come up with
Ooh, maybe,
for your next project. So
maybe for
trade
book two,
exactly trademark here if you do that at some point.
I will.
Well, and I was thinking when you're talking about the cheese empanadas and the pasta, I feel like carbs is the theme here.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason why food is sort of like the universal language because it transcends different culture and different languages. Because when you mention empanadas, I'm thinking dumplings from
Hmm.
Asia or pierogies from Poland, from Eastern Europe, and that we have all of these foods that are very similar to each other. I mean, noodles and all these dishes. When it comes to these comfort dishes, do you and this is something that we'll talk about, of course, throughout this hour, but is this something that you look to innovate or do you like to just keep it simple?
It really depends. It really depends what I'm trying to achieve. So there's a lot of different ways that I approach food, and it's what makes developing recipes for me a little tough sometimes because there are a lot of recipe developers that clearly fit into a certain box. Like they have the stylistic box. Like I am the seasonal home cook. I focus mostly on beans, vegetables, and then then you got that. And then you get like the really broy like sandwich meat guys where you're like, I'm gonna sloppily make this sandwich and slam it on the counter. There's gonna be sauce dripping down my like it's like there are these worlds where people like to live in, but I am not that person. I do not like to live in the world. Like I spent my entire career obsessing about food, studying food, so I wouldn't be trapped into a box and into a certain box. So I like to play in every sandbox. I like and this is true for my professional career as well. Like I've done the Michelin tweezer, very hyper modern food. I've done delivery only fast casual locations. I've done a steakhouse. I've done Mexican food. I've done Italian. Like I've played in all these different places, and like people often ask me, oh, which one was your favorite? It's like all of them. They're I get so many different things from all these different places. I can't say that I prefer one to the other. I can't say that one is better than the other. They're all just different experiences. I learn invaluable different things from all of these things. And I like applying that to how I cook at home. Like there are some days where I just want a very simple, classic aglio olio. Like that is all I want. I just want some pasta, some olive oil, some garlic, some cheese, maybe a little chili pepper. Chili pepper for me, no chili pepper for the child. But then there are also days where I just want to make some fresh gnocchi. And those exist in my same world. Like, and that's represented in the book as well. There are plenty of quick and easy pasta recipes where it will take you 20 minutes to go from packet to plate. But there's also a couple of recipes in there for pastas that you can make at home still easily because you don't need a pasta roller. Like it always frustrated me as a kid when I really wanted to make fresh pasta at home because I'd never had it, I've never made it. It wasn't something I had access to. And every single recipe I could find asked for this pasta machine. I'm just like, I don't have a pasta machine, but it's like there are plenty of pastas that you can make with just a butter knife cencione or orecchiette. You can make cavatelli. There's plenty. And so I wanted to explore those recipes for the people who wanted to make their own pastas at home, but didn't have access to a pasta machine. It's just as easy. It's just as delicious. And you can do it. And it's really exciting to make your own pasta at home. And yeah, so I feel like it's all just on a spectrum of how much effort do I want to put into my meal today?
Well, before we go to break, I want to ask because we got a gist of it here where, this cookbook, of course, is your way of sharing your recipes, both familiar and innovative, but it's also deeply personal, even with your lighthearted approach in terms of telling these really fun anecdotes alongside of your recipes about your childhood and your family and your upbringing. What has it been like sharing that with the world?
It was very therapeutic. So I had a very I I buried after my mom died, I really buried myself into my work. And I was in fine dining at the time where it is very easy to disappear into your work because there is unlimited amount of work. I was spending like 16 hours a day at work. You just come home, you shower, you sleep, you go back to work, you do it all over again. So I've never really I've obviously spoken to Soul about it and like, but there is something about sharing art or sharing your grief or your pain in a public setting that helps you move on and get over it. I think that's why art is so important for a lot of people because it's a way for them to process their grief and it's a way for people to kind of close the chapter and move on. And that's very much what it felt like for me. Like it felt like I was sharing all of these things that were kind of just living inside of me, knocking against each other and kind of creating a tornado inside of me. And by writing it and putting it on the page and kind of giving it to the world, it's kind of like this no longer belongs to me. This belongs to you. You can read it. You can do with it as you wish. So it felt very, very freeing.
Well, I think our team here felt very freed and healed when we went through your cookbook. Listeners, you've been listening to Ham El-Waylly, who's a chef and author of a new cookbook, Hello Home Cooking. After the break, we'll dig deeper into the inspiration behind his simple but delicious dishes. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Chef Ham El-Waylly can do it all, from fine dining cuisine to catering to his toddler's ever-changing palate. This hour, we're talking about where his love for food began and which recipes from his new cookbook, Hello Home Cooking, he hopes you'll try first. So, Ham, the life of a fine dining chef, as you just mentioned earlier, is notoriously difficult. There's a lot going on, and you can get really busy really fast, actually, whether you like it or not. And
Mhm.
in your cookbook, you write about those 18-hour days in restaurant kitchens, and your wife, Sola, is also an accomplished chef herself. So during these early days of your career, sounds like you barely had any overlapping free time with each other. I mean, if free time is even a thing, right? What kept you in the culinary world? What made it worth it?
Just it was all I ever wanted to do. It was all I ever wanted to do. And so when I found myself in it, I just was hooked. It's all we think about. It's all we talk about. It's when we had free time, chances are we were watching Top Chef or some kind of culinary competition. So it's like it's it makes it a lot easier that I found a partner that is as passionate about this field as I am. And it's kind of it's I mean, the culinary industry has brought me the greatest things of my life. It's like what brought me my amazing wife. It's what has brought me to this amazing city. It's brought me everything. So I'm very grateful to it, and I'm very thankful that this industry that I felt that I lusted after so for so long paid off and like gave me everything that I would want out of life.
Well, and we'll love to know too. And I think you share this a little bit. I think in your cookbook, where it actually took both of you a while to figure out your own philosophy of making food at home, because I think perhaps for like the layperson, you think, oh my God, you got two chefs in the family. You must make amazing food every day, 3 meals a day, sometimes an afternoon snack. But oftentimes that's not the case. So I would love to know so the process that the two of you worked out in terms of cooking meals for yourself when you're home. Because you must have those days where you are yourself totally cooked out and all you want is takeout or delivery.
Oh, absolutely. The the one thing that I've learned at home is that not everything needs to be a Michelin starred meal. Like sometimes your dinners will just be okay, and that's fine. Because there was a point in time where we would stress, we would be like we would think we're like, no, this is not good enough for us to have for dinner. We can't just have this for dinner. And then you end up psyching yourself out and then you end up just getting takeout. But fast forward to like family life now when it's not when it wasn't just us like it's because it was different like our time together was so precious just because it was so few and far between so we'd have the occasional dinner we'd occasionally have some free time for dinner maybe a couple of times a month so that meant we're either blowing it out and getting this buying some really nice steaks and having this big blowout dinner at home or we're going out but then as we as you spend more time together and then you're cooking for a kid and then there are times where it's like fine, just grab the chicken breast, throw it in the oven, roast some cauliflower and then let's call it a day. And like that old us would have talked so much shit about us and be like, look at these professionals eating that under-seared chicken with that is that there's no char on that cauliflower either? What monsters? But now it's just like, hey, this is seasoned, this tastes good, let's move on with the rest of our day. So it's like it's kind of nice. It's kind of there's something really nice about we even like joke about it. It's like, whoa, we're eating like regular people today. Look because it's because it's like it's kind of funny when you because the between the two of us, like it's like not to like we can cook anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like you
Right.
have that knowledge at your fingertips. It's like we can figure out how to cook most things and it'll be pretty tasty. So it's like sometimes you just want a cutlet and a salad. And that cutlet and salad, let me tell you, is like one of our most comforting and favorite dinners that we have at home. Like when we're having cutlet night, we are so happy. We are so excited. It's like one of our favorite nights. So it's like it's really it's nice. It's nice. It's like a really interesting juxtaposition, but it's really satisfying. It really warms your soul.
Well, you have a bunch of regular people just laughing and loving what you just shared because I think there's something very human about
Hmm.
that. You know, I mean, you can't help it but bring your sort of professional job into your kitchen, right?
Of
Where
course.
you're sort of caught up on that. But there,
Yeah,
there,
like I wonder if like a dentist ever comes home and is like, tonight I'm not gonna floss. They're like, we're crazy. We're gonna
ooh,
live like regular people. Not me though. I floss every night.
yeah,
Floss
no,
and tongue scrape required.
no, that's good. And you know, we're talking about eating, so that's it's actually
Yeah,
good PSA to let people know that please have good dental hygiene so you can
yeah,
actually continue to enjoy food as much as you can and for
it's
as long
important.
as you can, right? I mean, on your own YouTube channel, you whip up some recipes in your cookbook and you make it look so fun. And so, in your opinion, you know, from where you're standing, should cooking be fun? And how do you make it fun when it doesn't feel very fun?
Cooking should be fun. I do feel like um, there's a lot of there's a lot of like loose energy in this world that we can't explain. And I do feel like the state of mind and that the energy state that you're in kind of does affect the food that you put out, which is why people always say is like, oh, this food was made with love. You can taste it. I do think that there it affects your mental state and it's something that you're actively doing. So I think if you're in a positive state of mind, your food will just be better. The the biggest tip I have is like if you are not having fun cooking, chances are it's because you're not organized and you're not really sure what you're doing or like you're working in a messy place. So I would always because there are times where I don't have fun when I'm cooking. Like when it's like clock's ticking, everything it feels like the apartment has exploded because she's running around and like throwing everything she owns behind her and then you end up in a state of chaos so I what I always like to do is kind of just take a beat organize the things around me and come up with a game plan make sure my sink is clean make sure my mind is clear and then get back to it because I think it's like an even if you're not in the mood to do it, if you're doing it in an organized fashion, it'll be less taxing. It'll be more fun and you'll just have a better time doing it. But that's like I'm like the kind of person where if there's too much stuff in the counter, then I can't answer emails for the day just because it's like this place is a mess. I can't do it. I can't do it. So it's like just because it's like kind of a representation of the clutter that's in your mind. So
Right.
it's like, let me get this clutter out of the way and then clear my mind, and then I can get on and do what I'm doing. But it's like that's I think that that's my number one tip. If you're not having fun, just like step aside, take a deep breath, maybe have a glass of wine if you need it, and then just get back to the task at hand.
I mean, cooking wine, that's important.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Swig of cooking wine for you, and then a swig of cooking wine for the pot.
It's all about balance. You've been listening to Ham El-Waylly, who's the chef and author of a new cookbook, Hello Home Cooking. And after the break, we'll chat more about recipes and the anecdotes behind those recipes. Stay with us. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. This hour, we're talking to Ham El-Waylly. He's a chef, recipe developer, and video creator based in New York City. You may know him from the New York Times cooking channel, where he shared tips and tricks alongside his wife, Shola. And his new cookbook, Hello Home Cooking, is available now. So in your cookbook, you write that the song we just heard, Why Do Fools Fall in Love by Frankie Lyman, takes you back to a breakfast spot that you loved as a teenager in Doha, Qatar. What made that restaurant so memorable for you?
It was, it just captured something that didn't really exist there, that like quintessential classic Americana, because it felt oddly enough like this oasis in a desert, just because it's so different from everything that was around it. And it's something that I heard so much about growing up, because my mom and dad met in DC, and they had this ritual of going to diners every Sunday. So that I grew up hearing about these like American diners and what they would get, and like, oh, these pancakes drenched in maple syrup, or pancake syrup rather. It wasn't maple syrup back then. It was Aunt Jemima's, and just omelets or French toast and waffles and scrambled eggs. So it was exciting to kind of see what that was like, just because I'd never been to an actual diner before. So Johnny Rockets became a very regular hangout for me. And I love that each table had its little jukebox that you can pick the song, and that old Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, that was the song that I always like to open with.
Well, I love that you mentioned Johnny Rockets because I have very specific memories going there, but it's like in the mall on the West
Oh, a
Coast.
mall Johnny Rockets.
Yeah, so it's like but the vibes are still there where it is a funny sort of image where you have a diner in the mall, but the mall is also a very quintessential American experience, I think, in some ways. So to have the mall and the diner, it was almost a little overwhelming.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Did you go to Johnny Rockets a lot?
So actually, I would go to the movies with my friends, and then our natural progression would be to go to Johnny Rockets to get a milkshake.
Their milkshakes were so good.
And
I look around to see if there's a Johnny Rockets nearby often, just because I just want to go and just relive that experience again, just because I haven't in so long. I do remember their milkshakes vividly, though.
right, I mean, and the diner experience, I think, is something that's very specific and very unique to, I think, the classic American experience. So it's really
Yeah.
fun, sort of listening to you talk about that, and I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people. And another sort of unique thing that I've read in some of your recipes, because it includes a very overlooked kitchen cooking item, which is the microwave. So
Yeah.
I don't typically think of chefs using a microwave. And in fact, a lot of people say don't use the microwave if you can. So do you think that's is that like a common misconception just because it's something that you can whip up something real fast?
I think that is a very, very common misconception. I think that the microwave is another tool in your arsenal in the kitchen. So I honestly, I would much rather use a microwave than say an air fryer. I'm very much, I would go microwave over air fryer any day of the week. Um, Microwaves are amazing at steaming vegetables. It's one of my favorite ways to steam things. Like it can be asparagus, green beans, mushroom, whatever that may be, because you just need Tupperware, a little bit of water, you pop your vegetables in there, and then you steam it in little bursts until they're perfectly crisp, tender, and steamed all the way through. And it's just, you don't need to get a pot of water going. You don't need to bust out your steamer. It's so much faster, easier, and quicker than any other method. So I think like most things, there are some things that it's great for and some things that it's not so great for. So it's about maximizing its strengths and knowing what to use a microwave for.
Okay, I just have to say that I so appreciate you saying that microwave over air fryer. No shade on air fryers, but I was in a place where so many of my friends are getting air fryers, have gotten air fryers, are recommending to everyone that they know to get one. And I'm just one of those people that I'm just not going to get one. I have a microwave and a
Yeah.
toaster oven.
And a toaster oven. Between those two, you definitely do not need an air fryer. An air fryer is just a a this is going to sound horrible to the people who like air fryers, but a an air fryer is just a cancer-causing convection oven because it's like you get these plastic tubs that's lined with Teflon that gets so hot, and it's like it's I don't know how comfortable people feel just taking their food, throwing it in this plastic tub that's going to get heated to crazy temperatures and just be like, but it's like, but it makes my chicken nuggets really crispy. It's like, just put them in the oven, guys. Just put them in the oven. It's the same thing.
Well, we had to get a hot take from you at some point. So I think
Yeah,
that was it.
there it is.
There
I'm
you
going to get a
go.
lot of people really upset with me. The big air fryer is going to come after me.
Well, and so I think there's some really fun combinations of recipes in this book, and I think one that popped out for a lot of us, but for me is actually pretty familiar. But I loved seeing it in your cookbook was something like the broccoli and chamomile soup, because I don't think tea or tea leaves is something that we think about when it comes to cooking. But my family's from Taiwan, and there's a really popular dish that's called a tea egg. And so it's exactly what it is, where you marinate and you basically braise eggs in tea leaves. And it's very fragrant and very simple. And it's one of our comfort foods, actually. And hilariously, it's something that you can get at a 7-Eleven down the street. So, how do you know when something unusual, or at least unusual to the Western palate, that's going to work?
See these things, a lot of the things to me, people ask me like, "Oh, this is really unusual. This is like, how'd you come up with it?" But like to me, I don't find these things unusual because it's like it's kind of like it's a lot like Slumdog Millionaire. You know how like everyone's surprised when this kid who's just like has no real formal education can answer all of these questions. And then when they investigate, it's like it's not strange because he has this anecdote that explains why he knows these things. So it's like it's kind of the same thing. Like people is like, where did that come from? Well, that comes from one of my first jobs in New York City. It was a fine dining restaurant called WD50, helmed by Wiley Dufresne, and it was one of those Michelin very avant-garde modern restaurants. It was tasting menu. It was great. It was an environment that valued creativity above all else. And that was a very fun first job because it really rewired my brain with about how to think about food. That it's like it kind of took down all the walls that a lot of rigid French cooking kind of teaches you. And it's like, no, you can use those as like a baseline, and then you can take that anywhere you want to go. There's really no limits. The only criteria is, does this taste good? Like, you know what I mean? There are no rules. It's just, does this taste good? That is the only rule. And there was a dish there where he paired um, mashed potatoes that were fermented with fresh yeast. So it got like this really delicious, savory, almost nutritional yeast-like cheesiness inside of the mashed potato. And the yeast made it almost stretch like that French cheesy mashed potato aligote. It was really cool. And then that was paired with zucchini that was cooked in chamomile because there's when you get really nice produce, zucchini specifically, from the farmer's market, and it's never seen a fridge, it's just gone from farmer to plate. There are a lot of aromatics there, and there are a lot of floral notes that these vegetables have that just get lost through refrigeration. And a lot of those notes mimic some of the notes that you find in chamomile. So when you eat them together, it's just this very natural pairing. And the chamomile kind of brings out those lost floral notes in the zucchini that you didn't really think it had. So that when I tasted that, that immediately imprinted in me. And then I kind of like filed that away for later. And then because now I know that like, okay, some brassicas and zucchini and like these green vegetables pair really nicely with chamomile. And then when I'm not a big fan of soup. So it takes a lot for a soup to get me to go like, oh, this is delicious or this is interesting. Like I want to keep eating this. And there's just a beautiful simplicity in just blending broccoli into chamomile. And you end up with this very easy, very simple soup that has so much depth of flavor that it's like, wow, this feels like it was cooking for hours or that it took someone with a lot of skill to put together. But really, it's at its core, it's lightly cooked broccoli blended into chamomile tea until smooth. And that's it. Like that is all you need. Like some salt, some olive oil, and then you're good to go. And I think that's something that's just using um, that's just using ingenuity and innovation to make something incredibly complex with just two ingredients. And that's some of my favorite type of home cooking to do because like it takes me 2 seconds to cook some broccoli. It takes me 2 minutes to make some chamomile tea and it takes me 30 seconds to blend it together. And then I've got this really warming, satisfying soup in that amount of time.
Well, I love that you had something so, quote unquote, simple imprint in your mind. And we've been talking so much about memories and home cooking. So, Ham, I would love for you to close us out here with this question about what's one dish from the book that you hope becomes part of someone else's idea of home or a part of their memories?
Ooh, that is a really tough question just because there's like so many it's not just the stories in there that are so deeply personal. A lot of the recipes in there are very, very deeply personal. So it's like you're asking me to pick my favorite child.
I know.
Uh,
It's another hot take, I guess.
it is a very hot take. I think I think a dish though that can easily like seamlessly slot into anybody's weeknight rotation is the Bolivian arroz con queso. Like that is like that can easily be a replacement for mac and cheese. And it's so warming and satisfying and easy to put together. And it's when we visited Bolivia, my we would have Sunday churrascos every on a weekly basis almost at my uncle's house. And it was just a way for the entire family to celebrate together and spend time together. So we'd all meet for lunch at my uncle's house, and he has like the South American grills, which is like you have the coal base, and then you have the grate that's kind of on a wheel, and you can raise and lower it as you need. And then he'd just get a bunch of different meat and sausages and like throw it on the grill. We'd all play cards and laugh and drink and like kick a soccer ball around, and then we'd have just plates with different meats that would come off the grill, and just a big scoop of that cheesy rice and like a tomato and onion salad, and that is the quintessential comforting plate for me, just because it reminds me it's not just delicious. It doesn't just remind me of Bolivia, but it reminds me of the family that I wish I got to see more often.
Well, I know that was a tough question even when I was asking it, so I appreciate you giving us such a wonderful and beautiful answer. You've been listening to Ham El-Waylly, who's the chef, recipe developer, video creator, and author of the new cookbook, Hello Home Cooking. It is available now. Ham, thank you so much for joining us today and helping us celebrate your book.
Thank you so much for having me, Kat. This was so much fun.
I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Chloe Wynn. Our technical producer is Eugene Amatruda. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. Thank you all so much for listening, and happy cooking and happy eating, everyone.